Before the cameras, before the television deals, before Brandon Fugal put his name on the gate, a team of elite scientists spent years documenting things on that Utah property that the government did not want talked about. They wrote it all down, and then someone made sure you would never read it. In the mid-1990s, a cattle rancher named Terry Sherman bought a 512-acre property in the Uinta Basin of northeastern Utah. He paid a fair price for good land. What he got instead was something that would drive his family off that property in less than 2 years. Cattle found dead and surgically drained, structures that appeared overnight, lights moving through the sky that made no sound and obeyed no physics, and something else, something closer. Something that seemed to know it was being watched. The Shermans left. But what they described before they fled reached the ears of a man with very deep pockets and a very specific obsession. Robert Bigelow was already a real estate billionaire by the time he acquired Skinwalker Ranch in 1996. But money was not what drove him to that purchase. Bigelow had spent years quietly funding research into the fringes of human experience, areas where mainstream science refused to go. He founded the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, a private research organization staffed with credentialed scientists, former military intelligence personnel, and law enforcement investigators. He pointed all of them at one piece of land in Utah and told them to document everything. What followed was one of the most rigorous and systematically suppressed investigations into anomalous phenomena ever conducted on American soil. NIDS teams lived on and around that property for years. They deployed surveillance equipment, motion sensors, night vision technology, and veterinary forensic analysis. They interviewed witnesses. They cataloged incidents. They wrote reports. Detailed, clinical, unambiguous reports describing cattle mutilations with surgical precision that matched no known predator, objects maneuvering in controlled flight patterns at impossible speeds, and poltergeist-class events occurring inside structures in broad daylight. The data accumulated. The findings were extraordinary, and then they went quiet. The NIDS reports were never published in any peer-reviewed journal. They were never submitted to a government body. When the organization was quietly dissolved in the mid-2000s, the files did not go public. They went somewhere else. For 20 years, what those scientists actually documented on that land remained locked away, circulated only in fragments, dismissed as rumor, buried under the mythology that would eventually make Skinwalker Ranch a brand. But the reports existed, and pieces of them have now surfaced. What they contain is not what the television show wants you to believe. It is considerably stranger and considerably more deliberate. The cattle were the first warning sign. Across the Uinta Basin, ranchers had been reporting livestock deaths for decades before NIDS ever set foot on the property. But what the Sherman family documented in the years before Bigelow's purchase was something the local veterinarians could not explain and quietly refused to put in writing. Animals found with surgical precision incisions, no blood on the ground, no tracks in the mud surrounding the carcasses, organs removed through openings too clean for any blade commercially available at the time. When NIDS researchers arrived with their own veterinary consultants and began cataloging the evidence formally, they confirmed what the Shermans had been saying all along. The mutilations were not the work of predators. They were not the work of cult activity. Whatever was responsible had a level of biological knowledge that suggested something with a deliberate, clinical purpose. Then the poltergeist phenomena began to consume the research logs in ways that were harder to categorize and far harder to dismiss. Heavy equipment moved overnight with no mechanical explanation. Tools vanished from locked storage and reappeared in locations that had already been searched. NIDS team members, scientists with credentials in physics, biology, and aerospace engineering, reported hearing voices inside structures where no one else was present. One field researcher documented a period of 3 consecutive nights where every recording device on the property malfunctioned simultaneously during a specific 2-hour window, and then resumed normal function as if nothing had occurred. They did not publish these accounts. They buried them inside internal memos that were classified within the organization's own hierarchy and withheld even from junior staff members assigned to the ranch. The UAP sightings were where the NIDS data became genuinely alarming. Bigelow's team used military-grade night vision equipment, thermal imaging, and multi-spectrum cameras positioned at fixed observation points across the property. What they captured over the course of their investigation included objects exhibiting acceleration profiles that contradicted known physics, structured craft appearing and disappearing within single frames of footage, and on at least 2 occasions, luminescent phenomena that seemed to respond directionally to the presence of observers on the ground. These were not anecdotal campfire stories. These were instrument-recorded, time-stamped, cross-referenced anomalies, logged by credentialed professionals operating under strict scientific protocols. The data existed, it was real, and they made certain the public would not see it. What makes the suppression pattern so difficult to ignore is the institutional architecture that surrounded it. Bigelow did not simply fund a fringe curiosity project. He had active relationships with figures inside the Defense Intelligence Agency and NASA. Former government intelligence personnel were embedded within the NIDS research team. The ranch itself was treated not as a tourist attraction or a media opportunity, but as a classified research environment with controlled access, non-disclosure agreements, and compartmentalized information flow. When journalists attempted to investigate in the late 1990s and early 2000s, they encountered stonewalls from the organization, and in several documented cases, their inquiries were quietly flagged before they ever reached a point of publication. The infrastructure of suppression was not improvised, it was engineered. By the mid-2000s, NIDS formally disbanded. Bigelow cited a lack of conclusive findings as the official reason, but the researchers who had spent years on that property told a different story in private. The findings were not inconclusive. They were extraordinary, and someone had decided that extraordinary was far too dangerous to release. The 20-year silence that followed was not a gap in the record. It was a decision, a deliberate, coordinated choice made by people with the resources and the connections to ensure that what happened inside those survey boundaries stayed exactly where they wanted it. Underground, inaccessible, controlled. And when the property eventually changed hands and cameras finally arrived, everyone involved understood that the footage being shown to the public was never going to be the footage that actually mattered. So here is what they actually buried. The NIDS reports, the ones that survived, the ones that leaked through researchers and FOIA requests, and the occasional loose-lipped scientist, describe something that does not fit any single category of explanation. It was not simply UFOs. It was not simply a haunting. It was not cattle mutilants with surgical kits or pranksters in the Utah desert. What the data pointed to, again and again, was an intelligence. Something that appeared to react to observation. Something that escalated when studied. The ranch did not just produce anomalies. It seemed to respond to the act of investigation itself, as if the presence of scientists with equipment was part of the experiment, and they were not the ones running it. Bigelow's team documented this pattern and then went quiet. The reports were sealed. The scientists signed agreements, and the ranch sat in relative silence for years while those findings gathered dust in a Las Vegas office building, inaccessible to the public, to universities, to anyone who might have made sense of them. What makes this matter beyond the spectacle is the chain that followed. When the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, SATIP, was quietly stood up inside the Pentagon in 2007, Robert Bigelow's company BASS received the contract to manage much of the research. That is not a coincidence. That is a transfer. The methodology, the vocabulary, the framework that NIDS developed at Skinwalker Ranch fed directly into how the United States government formally began studying UAP phenomena, which means the most significant shift in American intelligence thinking about unidentified aerial phenomena in modern history was seeded by data collected on a single property in northeastern Utah that most of the public had never heard of. And when Brandon Fugal purchased the ranch in 2016, what he bought was not just land. He bought proximity to a question that had already been asked at the highest levels of government and never fully answered. Here is what they want you to dismiss. They want you to laugh at the television show. They want the drama and the night vision cameras to make it feel like entertainment. Because as long as you are laughing, you are not asking why a billionaire aerospace contractor spent tens of millions of dollars on a cattle ranch, why his scientists refused to talk for 2 decades, and why the conclusions of those sealed reports have never been formally released, peer-reviewed, or declassified. The data exists. The witnesses are real. The money trail leads somewhere they have never explained. And that silence, that deliberate, sustained, institutional silence, is the most documented thing about Skinwalker Ranch. Now it is your turn. Drop your theory in the comments below. Tell us what you think NIDS actually found. And if you want to keep going down this road, subscribe because we are just getting started. What should we dig up next?